Ready? All right. What's up, guys? I'm Rob from Turn. We're here with our very first podcast. We're about 2 years past due for
Number
our first
one.
podcast.
Finally got to number one.
Number one. It took 2 states.
We're not number one, but like this is our first one.
It took 2 states to get to number 1. And so we're here right now in
Number
Arizona.
one podcast, by the way.
I'm with Rich. I'm with Nate. Is it Nate or Nathan?
You know, my mom calls me Nathan.
What
Todd
does
calls me
social
Nate.
media call you?
So, but usually Nathan.
What are you on the
So
Telegram?
wait, hold on. First question. What is Nate in your phone as?
Nate Davitt OC.
Really?
Yes.
So okay, you're Nate connected still in my
Nice.
phone, right? As maybe in others, but so before
He
I
was Nate connected in my
before-
phone.
right,
Eventually,
so
I, had to
knew
edit
you
it.
as Nate connected
Okay.
because you and Kevin and these other guys are all saying, "Hey, Nate Connected's coming, and we got to talk
Yeah.
to him about this, that, and the other." And so I didn't know what he looked
After like 3 years of our friendship, I thought I owed it to him to know what his last name was. So
Oh,
I changed
perfect.
it in my phone so that I could remember it.
That's
So-
awesome. Thank you so much.
Selfishly.
For
Otherwise, it was Nate
6
connected.
months. I heard this name before I met you,
That sounds like
and
a
so
pretty
I
badass.
had, I had this vision of what you look like because I just kept
Like,
hearing it.
what are the chances his last name is connected and he works at Connected?
But I visioned somebody 6'5",
Some
6'6",
6'2".
Yeah.
about 280,
Ooh.
and black.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a different Nate Connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I met you finally, I was like, wow, this is definitely not the guy that I thought it was.
Got it.
But why are we here right now? Why are we here?
A little bit of a celebration. I think a little bit of time of reflection and to show some appreciation for what we've done so far in a very short amount of time.
And where are we?
We are in Chandler, Arizona.
Almost in
Exactly
Scottsdale, but
6.5 hour drive from California.
or a 45-minute flight from LA.
Yeah, that too.
I feel like the
Hindsight.
drive is more fun.
We really got to bond over the 14 times we stopped. Colby did a fantastic job at playing dress up at every single gas station. Apparently it's bike week this week too, so the reason that we saw all those bikes out there, it's bike week.
Got it.
They're called clubs, not gangs also.
So I want to go over real quick. You know, what are our roles with Turn? We've never done a podcast. No one really knows. What are our roles? How do we meet? My role is really to, I think, for brand. I think most people would say Rob's a creative guy, Rob's this and that, but really mine's like the connection between brand, people, and stores. I think long short is how can this brand create emotion between ourselves and the customer? And it's less about product for me and it's more about that connection. What's your relationship to Turn?
So my relationship to Turn, it's definitely business development leaning, right? I've spent a good part of the last 7-8 years alongside Nate, really developing relationships with people that are, effectively the people that are the biggest owners in the retail space, the largest manufacturers. So we have a really good pulse of like what's happening in the industry, and fortunate enough to have done an incredible amount of business with these people. So we have a rapport there that we're able to now leverage and implement, fairly quickly. And so my role is really just like if there's, if there's strategic intros, if there is a creative way for us and the retailers to effectively do more business together, then I want to know what those people want and then report back to base and have your creative mind go, how do we make this work and make sense, and how do we do something that's just different, right? And that's, in short, kind of the role, business development.
And I think arguably Nate has brought probably the most relationships to Turn. I think
Well, I
think
Nate,
what
so by default,
I think
that
what
means-
you're missing there was trust, right? Like you and then Nate. So what's your role here?
Man.
Chief Fire Officer.
Yeah, Chief Fire Off. No. I mean, on paper, it's called President of Sales. But as we all know, that's not really what we go by. I mean, really just market implementation of, taking everything that you've created and how do we get it to the market. One, building our sales team, building, helping build the brand team, expanding us into a new state of Arizona, but really taking everything that's from brand and how do we implement it to the cannabis side of the world. I think that's why the partnership has worked so well, because I'm not a creative at all, but on the cannabis side, I'm a creative in that type of sense of how to run a cannabis business, and working hand by hand with you and on doing the brand side. I think that's why we've been able to get to where we are right now so quickly, because one, we don't step on each other's toes, and two, we're both pretty good at what we bring to the table.
I think that I said this yesterday in that podcast we did, but there's a lot of trust between brand and relationships or business development, and that's, hey, we're going to go in this direction, and there's really I wouldn't say no, but there's very little like debate about what your direction you want to go in, or a relationship you want to bring in.
Right.
Like that trust is already there. I don't think that you would bring that to this circle if it wasn't already vetted. So I think we move quickly because you guys have those relationships, and you probably deflect a lot of other opportunities and you choose the right ones. And then I'm kind of running in the creative way, and you guys just kind of go with what I come up with, trusting that Rob, I think, has his pulse with the people.
With some guardrails.
Straight names.
I think it's, I say this often, but I think it's so absolutely true. Nate and I come from years and years of experience of what not to do, right? And through that process, we obviously figured out what to do. And I think oftentimes people kind of forget to understand that it might be more valuable for you to understand what not to do than it is to do, because if we can avoid some of these pitfalls where, for instance, this was something that did happen, right? We had somewhere upwards of 2,000 liters of oil that was not good, most of which was already in the marketplace, and we had a catastrophic failure in quality. And those kinds of things and measures that we didn't put in place prior were detrimental hits to the company. And now I can say hey, just make sure before we do anything like this, to avoid those pitfalls. And that's why we're comfortable making decisions quickly, because we know where those roads end.
So basically it's, the questions to ask before we even go down a certain road, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, and that's because you have years of experience where Select, what other places were you at, or was it Select only?
My background was really in multi-level marketing and network marketing. I was in the direct sales business from the year 2000. I was 18 years old when I got recruited into an MLM. And so my environment was always sales related. Everything that I've ever done, any money I've ever made, was always 100% commission. So, in that environment, you have to thrive, otherwise you don't have a paycheck, right? So I was fortunate enough to be mentored by some incredible people who taught me how to build these sales forces. And we built organizations of upwards of 120,000 active salespeople across 16 countries. I traveled all over the world in really teaching entrepreneurship and teaching sales. And then when I got the knock on the door from one of my best friends, Cam Forney, who had started a company with his wife in his living room, a company called Select Strains at the time, and eventually they shortened it to Select. He said, hey, whatever that sales process is that you do for that business, this industry doesn't have it at all. So I think that if you implement some systems and processes in this super emerging industry that doesn't have this element of professionalism because it's been run rogue for the years prior, then you can have success. And sure enough, that was the result. We took a brand that was, wasn't welcome to California with open arms. Turns out that California doesn't give a fuck about Oregon weed, right? Being number one in Oregon is they said was being the tallest midget. It doesn't really matter, right? California is a different market. And we're okay, cool. But we just knocked on the doors. We followed up. We did all those other things that every other sales organization would do in the normal world. and it ended up working. So
That's actually how I met Rich and Cameron, is because Cameron came to my store at that time, and
Your store here?
it was in
California?
California, in Southern California, and he put, I think, $20,000 worth of free product on my shelf, and then I come back from lunch, and all my other brands were off the shelf, and I said, "Where are all the other brands?" He's like, "Don't worry about them." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Because I'm giving you this all for free, and if it sells, it's all 100% your profit. Then hopefully you come reorder." He's like, "What if I don't come reorder?" He's like, "Then you just made a shit ton of money." And then that day, he introduced me to Rich, and I went over to their house, and then we became what we are today.
So how did this is a question I get all the time. Like, how'd you come up with Turn? How'd you start Turn? Where does Turn come from? And Turn started the Nate. Well, the idea for the cannabis company came from a place, and then the name Turn came from a place, and somehow they came together.
So after the Cureleaf acquisition in 2019, we knew that obviously we were gearing up to do something different, what was going to be next. And Kevin Keelan and I, my partner in mushroomsupplies.com, plug, was we're thinking like, okay, what are we going to do next? Now, we had this idea, and it was originally a different name, and then we're like, okay, Turn is interesting, and there's so many different ways that you can spin it. There's an element of simplicity to it, which I think is like profound, because when I got involved in cannabis, I was like, why is this so complicated? Like, why is it got to be a sativa hybrid indica? Why can't you just say, like, this is going to make you feel happy, up, right? And this is going to make you feel sleepy, down. So we had this idea, or just kind of like a broad concept of this idea. But at the same token, I was also starting another company, mushroomsupplies.com, plug again. And we said, okay, who do we know out there that could give life to this brand idea with some input from us, right? And some guidance, and someone that can take the reins and lead the entire charge, and then ultimately also figure out a way to finance it.
Yeah, and so
and you were literally the only person that I thought of. I was like,
well, I was in the garage working out at 5 a.m, and a friend of mine who owns basically the vertical from seed to dispensary minus the brand says, you kind of similar. Like, you guys came to me for a reason, and for this e-com. So by the way, Turn was this e-com product.
Not cannabis related.
Non-cannabis. It was
As a matter of fact,
like a
we
vitamin.
said, please don't make this a cannabis brand.
So
Please
wait, hold on.
do
Wait,
not.
back to that. So then a good friend of mine needs someone to come in with brand. And that brand, I said, you know what? Yeah, I could do that as a hobby. Yeah, I could do that in like passing time. I'll come up with the brand and throw it in your store. Well, meanwhile, you guys have absolutely no interest in starting a cannabis brand. In fact,
No.
You're like, this is not going to be like, no, we're done.
I mean, it's
we're done
just
in cannabis, right?
You got to understand, like after that exit, and after struggling so much to try to bring brand awareness when you're literally not allowed to do anything when it comes to social media. I mean, it is like walking on eggshells all the time, and if your business is affected by whether or not your Instagram is on or off, which it is, then that sucks, right? So we're like, okay, well, why don't we create a brand where we can actually advertise and do everything that we possibly can to push this through an e-com model, direct to consumer. And then of course you said, I got a better idea. Let's start a weed company.
And it wasn't even that I had a weed company. What I was actually starting, Nate probably doesn't even know this. I was starting an alcohol company. I was starting. The little ready to drink cocktails.
That's right.
And I'm sitting here trying to figure out a name for the cannabis company. I can't figure it out. I'm trying to come up with all these different names. And meanwhile, you guys are moving into mushrooms, and I'm sitting there trying to find a name, and someone's like, we have this Turn thing going on, but we're not going to do anything with it. Just use Turn. And I was just tired. So I'm like, let's just use Turn. And so it made sense. The up, the down, the same reasons we were going to go with the sleep gummy,
yep.
and then the energizing or mood lifting gummy.
Yep.
It all still applied, I think, not only for cannabis, but for many aspects of life. And so that just made sense. I ran with it, and I started creating. You guys went in your direction. And at some point, somehow I met Nate. And I think that was Well, I don't know. So why did Nate even?
Well, I met you through Rich because at that time crypto was booming, and he's like, "Hey,
That's right. You
I
guys
have
were
this
Bored
guy.
Apes and Bored
I have this
Aping
guy
together.
that is obsessed with Bored Apes as much as
Also
you
has
are."
a Urus.
Yeah, we had a lot, some very similar things. He used this as a selling point to introduce me to you, and I was like, "All right." He likes Bored Apes, has a nice taste in cars, and he's starting a cannabis company. So let's talk to him. So I got introduced to that, and at that time, I recently was stepped down from my role at my previous company, and I was kind of bored. No puns on the Bored
Bored
Apes.
Ape. Ooh.
I see it. I see it.
But at that time, we, starting a cannabis company, it was like people were like, "Yo, what are you doing?" That cannabis was not like at its peak at that time. It was actually in the downfall. It was,
Yeah.
I think, right before COVID, or right after COVID. It was like when COVID got away, after the big COVID boom when cannabis was pumping. And then I think everything started slowing down, and I was we're like, shit, we're just gonna start another vape line, which is like the toughest thing, and to do. And I look back at that, like where we were 2 years ago to now, it's just fucking actually pretty crazy to see like what we've accomplished at a downfall of the cannabis industry.
But so you're coming out of cannabis. Yeah, you're bored. So what? You have a million other things that you could get going on, right? You have all these opportunities. Your last company was very successful, still is. And then there's this random person, zero cannabis experience, starting a vape line in the worst time to ever. From what I hear, I don't know this. No one's even telling me that this is the worst time to start a vape line. Remember, at the time, it's still a hobby for me though. Like it's not really a big deal because I'm just putting it in my friend's store, which, by the way, they sold right when I got the product launched. So that didn't work out.
I think I took it as like a challenge, like because there was always doubt about starting another, vape line. And I think I took that as a challenge, like, all right, we can do this and we can become, at least a top 10 contender in the industry, within, a couple, like 6 months, we were the number 2 in disposables. And then, now overall we're number 3, 4 in the state, whatever platform you want to look at. It's a huge accomplishment. And I think that, when I first came on and joined the team with you, I was just like, this is going to be something I want to be a part of because it's a challenge. So for me, I feed off a challenge and I feed off of people doubting me. And one, I like that you had no cannabis experience because it's sometimes like I've dealt with a bunch of people that had they've been in the cannabis industry for so long that it was always like a headbutt and like who had the bigger ego, at that time or who knew what's more important. And I think that, was someone that didn't have some cannabis experience but had really good branding. And I think that that's where I was more excited about it because I was like, damn, I can do something that I want to do on the cannabis side. Well, I don't have to focus on, I don't have to focus on the brand or the vision and someone else can do it. And that's why it was so appealing to me.
I think we've already talked about like our strengths. Both of you have relationships. I have more of the brand. I'm like so crazy about the brand. If Turn's not capital, if Turn's not lowercase, I feel a certain way. I get in my head, right? And Nate continues to capitalize the T. I don't know if he does it intentionally.
Oh, I got a scolding too.
Yeah, you did it the other day.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You did it the other day. And hey, I get it. Auto caps happen. But it's time to always lowercase the T in Turn. Always.
We just want people to like see it. That's why we do it. T. Why is it capitalized? Oh, because it's Turn. Get it?
Yeah, no, I get it. It's tough.
I didn't even know that made you
This
mad.
is why you're here.
Huh?
I didn't even know that made you mad.
Oh yeah, it's upsetting.
It's off-brand,
It's
bro.
upsetting.
Off brand, bro.
It's almost like spelling made with 2 E's. Like consistently. Or 2 D's. You are messing it up. It's not accurate. It's wrong.
Okay.
It's thoughtless. Anyways, back to what we're good at.
yeah.
I think I'm good at that stuff.
He's
Because
good at spelling
I'm good at
and capitalizing
I'm good at-
and
Nate's good at what he's good at. You're good, and then somehow this works.
But they're all very different, which
but
is also
we can't
why it
forget
works.
about the queen that sits behind the
The
business.
queen, yeah. So yeah, I like that. I don't want to start this one off. So Nate, what do you feel? So we have this other driving force with the brand because right now we're talking about relationships, we're talking about branding, we're talking about cannabis.
Well,
We're not talking about what the other core, like the very important need when it comes to actually growing a business.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I know Rob is the same, like we just operate very fast and want to get things done quickly. And sometimes, that's not always the best way to do things. And, there's the queen, which is her name is Bree. She's not sitting here at this table right now, but she's the one that's kind of holds this whole organization together for sure. I mean, definitely holds me and Rob for sure together because again, I'll send 15 different text messages and emails, and then after I send, I'm like, does this even make sense? And then somehow Bree takes it and makes it make sense for everyone. Yeah. So it's definitely something that's not my background or anyone on this, podcast's background of holding operation standards, SOPs, and then just overall HR really. And those are the things that I think we all tend to forget about, like, oh, the shit, we're actually running a real business now.
Yeah.
And, besides like when we were bootstrapping it, when we first started with like 4 employees, now we have 36 that actually in a whole nother state, which will have probably another 20 employees here in the next like 2-3 months, and that person, his name is Bree, is pretty much holding this business together, and she's the glue of the business for sure.
And she's, I say like HR, compliance and all that, but I mean, it's much more than that.
She's Mama Bear.
Yeah, it's just Mama Bear. It's holding everyone accountable, keeping us compliant, keeping us
making sure the bills are paid.
But paid right. Like that's the other thing, like even down to accounting and how things are done. Back to SOPs. Like if they're not done right, it could get done. It could get done quick, but then there's a ton of consequences and more work that actually gets put on our plates later on. Yeah. And you know that with Mushroom Supplies and the other businesses that you've ran, like you can get it done quick now, but there will be a consequence later on. And but she's really good at at least challenging us to at least think about it before we go and make a decision, or hey, let's run it by her, run it by whoever needs to be run by, instead of just pulling a trigger.
I think it's ultimately, and Nate and I kind of saw the opposite of like what it looks like when the money is seemingly unlimited, right? And you can put 3 brand ambassadors per sales rep and put 12 sales reps into a state in California and then wonder why you're not making money, right? And it's like that was a different environment because at that time money was pretty easy to raise, and now with the valuations where the companies are, with where the economy is at, like it's not easy to go out there and raise money. So you have to be conscious of what your expenditures are. What's your burn, right? Are you making money? And by the way, you have to juggle understanding that growth is a great thing, but it can also be a terrible thing if it's not done correctly.
And growth is very scary. Like, so
it's just as scary.
A lot of people see the rankings, and I think that the assumption is, wow, you guys are doing so well. It must be great.
Just throw more money at it.
From the time you spend $1 on hardware or packaging, and the time you make, let's just say we make $2 on it. That's 6 months, man. That's like 180 days. And then by that 180 days, you've already grown.
I mean, if you look at, if you look at 4 months ago to now, we've almost grew 85% in 3.5 months. That's like unheard of. Like, even from the beginning, we were growing 20%, 20%, 20%. Then it was like 10, 5. Then all of a sudden, in the last 4 months, 3-4 months, it's like we grew almost 85%, which is crazy. And that's the scariest part, right? Because especially when you have sales reps, all they want to do is revenue. Oh, I'm excited, I'm making sales, blah blah blah. But then there's this other thing that we always forget about: it's collections.
Yeah, making sure the money comes back.
Yeah, right. And and me and Rich have seen that side of that business of like big revenue, and then where's all this money's not coming in, but we're getting an outside investments to fund it anyways. So, but now like that's just cannabis has changed now. Like before, 4 years ago, everything was top line revenue, right? And now we look at it today, it's all bottom line, right? Because how do you make money and how do you withhold that? And going back to it, why we got into this part of this conversation is because having someone like Bree to make sure, we are staying afloat, we are spending money correctly. And, I know that's not kind of like what she wants to do, but she's there, just getting it done for us.
I think there's a lot of, that's a good point. So I think every one of us right now, and the other day you texted me with something and you seemed very frustrated, and and I understand it. I think all of us, and this is the reason why it's working and we're growing, is because all of us are doing things every single day we don't want to do. Is that fair to say?
No, for sure.
So I wake up every day and most of my day is doing things I don't want to do.
Yep.
All of Bree's day is doing things she does not want to do. That's not her role, but she does it every day, man. Like, and I know you do. You know, I don't know all you and I are so busy we don't talk about these things sometimes, but I know you're doing things you don't want to do or putting up with things you don't want to put up with. But honestly, like, not many people can do that day after day for 17 hours or more a day consistently.
Well, and that's why, like, going back to, like, when people ask, what did you guys do? What, like, everyone thinks it's some easy sauce of, like, how, and we're not even nowhere near done yet and close to me where we're at. Like, right. This, but we blew our own expectations. But I go back to when people ask me, like, oh, you guys just knew everyone. You guys just got into the door really quickly. That's like 5% of people, the business, like, and on the sales organization
you have
side,
to deliver a good product.
Yeah, and on the sales side, for us, it's like getting in the doors. And I tell our sales reps, they always celebrate, oh, I got into a new door. That's like the easy part. Like, and I think that goes back to, like, sorry, and I got off a little rant, but, you know, we do things that we don't want to do, and that's what separates us from, I think, other businesses and operators. A lot of operators, you know, sit back behind their office desk and then, you know, puppeteer everyone to kind of do things. And, you know, for us, our team feeds off of our energy and sees us, you know, doing the shit that, you know, that no one else is. Like when I still go to stores and I open up doors with our sales reps. We have a sales director, we have sales managers, but no, I rather just go out and do it ourselves with them. And
dude, today, and I'm proud of all of us for doing this. Like, Rich didn't need to come out. We're in Arizona today, opening up a new state, and all of us are brand ambassadors today. That's just, none of us are sales reps, none of us are CEOs or founders. We're brand ambassadors. We're out there talking about the product.
And it's such a different customer base, in my opinion, this state, like, versus California, right? I'm used to seeing California, that customer all the time, and I feel like the customers out here are slightly older demographic. A lot of people that are using cannabis for medicinal purposes, like legitimate medicinal purposes, like for aches and pains. I learned today that if you don't have a gallbladder, then concentrates likely won't work for you, and flower is your only option. Like, and the only way that you know that is if you start talking with these patients that are coming in the doors. And I mean, I think the reception of the brand was fantastic. It was like, you know, the older generation was like, this is a really cool brand that I can see myself, like, associating myself with. And of course, the younger generation is like, this is really cool. I'm like, you guys don't even know what it is. They're like, I know, but it's still really cool.
But that's how you get better about hearing it, being in front of it, like being out there on the streets. And that's how, you know, again, going back to our success. And still, I don't even count us as a success because we're not even close to where we want to be. But, you know, the recipe for where we got today is doing everything ourselves with the team. And I think a lot of people forget that because they think that, you know, they have this title and this role that, oh, no, we can just, you know, pay someone else to do that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not really going to get us to anywhere that we need to go because your team's never going to work just as hard as you if they don't see you doing it. And I think that, you know, all of our teams, like just even yesterday, hearing some of what our team said that was out here, like thankful for working for our company, is like we are willing to do everything that they're willing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that, you know, that's why, you know, our so-called early success has helped us so much.
Where do we want to be? Where do you want us to be in the next, I guess, year? Like, what are some of our goals? And I think I haven't really even thought about it because we are, and I want to change this. I want to start looking 2-3 years ahead. But right now, like, we're in it, you know, we're in it. Like you said, we're boots on the ground. We're in the stores. We're doing all the things. But where do we want to be in 6 months and 12 months from now?
You know, I look at that or I wonder itself too, because, like, you know, originally, like when we first started this whole thing, I was like, I don't want to be the number one. I don't want to be the biggest in one state. Yeah. Like, I didn't want to do that because with being the biggest in the state like California,
the biggest target.
Yeah, and you have consequences. You're like, you have more product you have to move. You have a bunch of promotions that you have to do, and like, yeah. And so, like, for me, like, it changed, right? Like, I didn't want to be. I came from, you know, being one of the top flower, you know, companies. You know, he came from being the top vape company, and so like my perception was like, fuck, I don't want to do that again. I want to be just a good selling product in the market,
Yeah.
and I still think that's where I want to be with all these new states, right? Like, I don't want to be small, but I don't want to be the biggest, and I want to make sure that we just continue sticking to our core values of being the best product that we can be, while competing in, you know, the top 10 brands at least in that category. And I think that, you know, taking that to you know, multiple states and being in those top 10 categories in multiple states and not trying to focus on being number one in every single state, because I think then that takes away from our core value of who we are, and then it changes a lot of things that we're going to do, because like then we're forcing things that we don't want to do to become number one.
It's exhausting, and it's not organic.
Yeah.
You know, if we focus on continually delivering a high quality product, a really cool experience, a really cool opportunity for people to win prizes that just really haven't been done in the space, then I think organically we're going to gain a lot of fans, right? And if we end up getting to number one, so be it.
If the
right?
if the focus is brand,
right?
And so my like brand, everything, product, this, that, whatever. If the experience, if the focus is brand, the everything else will
Money
come
flows.
the way that it needs to come. Whether that's number one or whether that's 5 or maybe that's 20, it doesn't really matter. But it's coming in the right way, because if number one is the target, is our only focus, we will cut corners. We will shave costs. Why? Because oil just went up 50 cents this month.
We'll say
So
yes
if
to deals that we shouldn't say yes to, right? Like that.
We'll
could get us into
sacrifice
financial trouble in
we'll
the
sacrifice brand, and we might get there quicker, but we'll fall faster, is how I see it. So focusing on brand is, I think, is what you said, but I'm saying it in a different way, I think. And that's most important. And for me, my goals for Turn is just that. It's continuing to build the brand. And what is Turn? You know, as of right now, it's a cannabis company to most people, because that's what we sell. It's cannabis. So, you know, we just launched hemp. We have some apparel out there, but really for me, it's, you know, I want Turn to be a name that's not just cannabis, and I want to work on the brand. I want to work on the lifestyle. And what is lifestyle? Lifestyle is the feeling and experience when you think of the word Turn. You don't think of cannabis. You think of this. You think of this room. You think of Rich Paula. You think of Nate, or you think of like, oh man, that was
My last
so
name
cool
is
meeting
David,
those
by the way.
people.
connected.
My last name is
Nate.
David, just if anyone wanted to know.
OC.
David, David connected. I want people to. I want to work continuing to. I want to continue to work on the way people feel when they think of Turn. And so that doesn't mean better products or a pre-roll or all these things. It just means the brand, and it could be a pre-roll, or it could be more events, or it could be clothing. It could be just anything.
And that's like adding that to like sticking to their values of like, because when brands start getting too big, they feel like they can just throw their name on anything and it will just sell, which is like false.
Yeah.
Because like, and that, like, even the new
when you
products
start
that we're
falling.
developing, you know, that's exactly like, that's how brands start to fall, because they take focus on the shiny new object that they think that's really good, be it because they're so big, they can just slap their name on a logo or on their packaging. And that's what I like about all of our process. We take time to do everything. Like we've been
too much time.
sometimes too much time, but at least we
But
know
in a short amount of time. We take a lot of time in a short amount of time to make the decision.
It feels. I know what you're saying with that, because with corporate,
Yes.
things just became
There's
years,
no
right?
loop.
Years to make a decision. I remember you were telling me about you were trying to push I think a 1 gram live resin or something, and it took years, and then the rest of the market had already launched it.
And then 6 months later, they're like, "Oh, I think it's a good idea." I'm like, "Okay, well, here's where the email loop started, and this is where we're at so far. So congratulations. This is a vortex."
So you're right.
of
Like
bullshit."
we take a lot of time, and it feels like a lot, but it's actually not a lot when we compare it.
In
But
comparison.
it feels like a lot.
It's calculated. It's thorough.
yeah.
Let's. I'm curious. What are some of your favorite moments, or like, just things that pop up in your head that you just always uncontrollably laugh about or smile about?
In life?
No,
Turn?
in the last 2 years since we gave birth to this thing.
Oh my gosh, things that I laugh about?
I mean, just like
My spelling.
I don't laugh about your spelling.
Spelling,
I get
that's for
tears. I get tears about that.
charging all the disposables was fun. The charging party.
Stuff. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, so early struggles. Let's call it early struggles that were
Yeah,
so
let's talk
fucking
about the
sad in the
fuck-ups.
moment. We had a different pen when we launched, right? And that pen was so bad, and it was
fire.
fire.
Ah.
Fire. It should have been thrown in the fire. And the pen, what happened to the pen?
It was DOA. It was dead on arrival. So apparently this hardware has been chilling in a warehouse somewhere in China for a while, and so by the time they got to us, most of the batteries, and by most I mean probably about 95% of the 20,000 units for the first order run, were not charged. So
What's
So I
What
go
does that
on.
electricity bill look like that?
oh my!
I go
so
on
we
Amazon and I bought. There were
10
100
of them.
units.
He bought 10 of them, 10 100 unit USB chargers with the cords. The place looked like a fucking recording studio.
But they don't come with cords. You
Oh,
buy
no,
the cords,
And then you have to plug
and then
all
you
the
have to
cords
plug in 100 cords
And
into
then you
this
have to
the
plug
big
in
device, right? And these are
100.
micro USBs. They're not USB-Cs.
And not good.
And we had a team of, I don't know, 15 people.
In roughly 65 square feet.
So
was
hold
also
on.
the
We had a
break
team
room.
of 15 people. This is for live resin, by the way.
That
And-
wasn't good.
Yeah.
Wasn't
So
as
so we
fire.
charge all these
THC
pens.
bomb, not so bomb.
4 days to charge 20,000 pens, I think.
Yeah.
We're charging them all and celebrating now. Now we're celebrating because we charged the pens, and this is a victory. Because, so then we're filling it up with this live resin. That was also so painful to make. Like we sourced it. And it wasn't like we bought ready oil. Like it was in fresh frozen format, right? And we had to toll it and do all this and
Formulations.
and then throughout the process of the batteries dying and the charging, the fresh frozen became
Not so fresh.
It just wasn't fresh. I don't know if the freezer went.
It goes back to probably
Gross
how your
frozen.
defrost story of your taquitos that you were telling earlier.
I had a story that I told her earlier about the taquitos
Yeah,
defrosting and
just remind you of the fresh
refrosting,
frozen.
and I think that might have been what happened with the fresh frozen.
It
For
went
sure.
to keto.
So we
Montezuma OG.
Montezuma, So we charged the pens, we filled them with fresh frozen, and then what happened?
They don't fucking work, dude.
No, they tasted like shit.
Burnt.
Or
Burnt.
the best comment we got was, "I can't taste anything." Like at least that was better than this tastes like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't taste shit, then it didn't taste like anything. But it tasted like
I think we
shit.
like paused our launch like 7 times.
The live resin launch.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were cursed.
We had to.
Live resin is still a curse.
Still a curse.
Live resin is tough.
I mean, we've been asked many times, "Hey, where's your live resin disposable?"
We're still working on
we
it.
love the other ones. It's,
Talk about our R&D processor, make sure it does correctly,
So
years
actually,
later.
I got to talk about this because this is actually like a pat on the back, even though it was another launch failure to launch. Why did our last batch of live resin fail?
Hardware.
Hardware, correct. The hardware clogged. Do you know why it clogged?
Our oil was too thick.
No,
Fire.
it was too fire.
Fire.
What happened was
It tasted burnt because it was so
this
fire.
this is new postless technology, and
Oh, Rob was trying to be in like 2026 in the technology.
so what happened was they were R&Ding with oil because China can't do R&D with live resin overseas.
Yeah.
So they bring it here and they're R&Ding with other brands' oil, or they're buying oil from other brands, and everything was working. Everything was great. The live resin works. They give us some pens. Yeah, they even worked, a few pens. And so they tasted great. We sourced the oil. Everything was good. We pack it and we get it out. And now it's starting to clog. And we're like, dude, what the hell happened? Well, we were one of the few brands, I guess, and the only brand that they dealt with that was 100% live resin. And the other brands were cutting it with distillate or whatever, and they were buying this cut live resin.
Different viscosities.
And what happened was with that pure live resin was a very aggressive, and I might not be saying this right, but aggressive terpene. It was so live that messed up the silicone inside of the pen, and it caused a drop or two of oil to get to the ceramic core. And they said if we had a little bit of distillate in there, had a little bit of this, had a little bit of that.
And you know what, that tells also a lot about Turn too, because you know you see one of our campaigns on one of our sweaters is what the fuck is live resin, and because in the markets like what is live resin, because there's liquid diamonds, refined live resin, there's liquid everything. There's like 7 different ways to get around calling live resin actually distillate. And that's like, I want to add to this is like, that's one thing that we don't hide at Turn. Like we're not ashamed of telling people that we have a distillate line, we have a live resin line, and we have a rosin line. We don't have to trick the consumers to tell them there's something else inside of the product when there's not. Sorry to go off a little tangent.
Yeah,
there.
it's not. It's true. It's back to brand. Like it's been 2 years. We still have no live resin disposable out. And it's because we stayed true to brand, and we're not putting out this product called 100% live resin that has distillate in there. And so I think that's also, we gave up revenue, man. We gave up doors that won't take us because they don't want distillate. You know, we've sacrificed that for the last year to make sure that the product works correctly in the hardware that we want to put it out in. And luckily, by the end of this month, we should be launched with it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and same live resin that goes inside of our pod system is now going to be available in our disposables, which is fantastic. And I know the market's going to explode with them and love them, and just like how our distillate and botanical line is.
Live resin.
So I think you asked,
And it's fire.
and it's fire. I mean, you
fire.
asked what made us laugh, and that was a very painful laugh. That one right there,
Which one?
charging party.
The charging party, yeah. I was there. It was very painful for me as well. The pizza was great though. But it was a great memory, right? I mean, it's just like, man, it's like, tell me a success story that didn't have bullshit like startup moments like that, right? Like where you're just like, this is so ridiculous, but what an awesome story this is going to be in the future.
I mean, we have 20 stories like that, man. Like Nate asking us to sticker things at the last minute because compliance wasn't cool with a certain name, and they were already manufactured and co-packed and filled and literally on the way to the dispensary.
Yeah, there's this guy named Colby. You know, he was really good at that time of stickering for us, and he kind of saved the day and helped us resticker a bunch of stuff in the back of a van.
The best was the 4:40 p.m. stickering, and by the time he got there, I think the dispensary was closed.
Yeah, it wasn't closed. They rejected the order because it was past their cutoff time of taking it in.
Right.
After this poor guy was sweating in the back of a van, stickering everything.
Those are the funny. Damn.
It's not. I mean, I was laughing because I wasn't the one sweating in the van.
Right.
But
that's
Yeah, those stories are the ones that make it all worthwhile.
I wonder what Colby would say to
yeah,
that.
I don't know. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like this. This is great to say, to even just learn a little bit about the brand. Why are we doing this? Who are we? A little bit. I know we need to touch more actually on the next one about like who is Turn when it comes to like brand ethos and the mission that we're out there. But this was a really good way to meet the people that had all of these contributing ideas to Turn, but very different. Like the way the name came and the way that Rob operates and the way that Nate operates and what all of the things we bring, and how has Turn become what it's become. And it wasn't because someone had one idea and then the vision, it was linear. Like it wasn't.
Right.
It was all of these like is galaxy full of stars and all colliding, and it's really cool to see like how everybody's influence from their own backgrounds has contributed to where Turn is, including Bree, which back to corporate and structure, all of this has, and that's what this podcast was for, is to really even, explain to everyone, that's asking where did Turn come from, give you a little bit of answer. And I want to do more of these. I want to explore, what products we're coming out with, what's up next, like what's Rob doing in his personal life, what's Rich doing in his personal, like whatever.
I don't know if I want to know what Rich does in his personal life.
We all know what Rich does in his personal life, and I think that there is an audience for that. I do think
there's
that
a pretty niche audience. Though,
very niche.
Rich is the only single one here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a niche audience, but they're high paying.
I'm single, but I have someone that would be very mad if I said that.
Oh, I meant you're not married.
That's true. Definitely true. And I don't have 2 wieners.
But yeah, appreciate you guys coming out, man.
Some more podcasts, more states, more fun stuff,
More states, more fun stuff,
more apparel, I
more
need some new
skews
shirts.
to make Bree happy.
More dog
skews,
bowls.
More dog
skews.
bowls for Kyle.
To the top selling dog bowls today. Those were amazing.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, happy launch here in Arizona.
We'll see you at podcast number 2.
Number 2.
When will that be?
5 minutes. We'll do
All
another.
right, perfect. Later.
That's it.
Cheers.
Change shirts.